Welcome everyone to our webinar on collaborated cyber defense in pandemic times. We have shared the poll. Kindly fill it up. Each poll will have a time limit of 1 minute. Thank you everyone for participating. Today, we have Akshat Jain and Avkash Kathiriya from Cyware Labs as our speakers. A thought leader and a creative thinker, Akshat has immense expertise in bringing innovative technology solutions for tackling societal and enterprise problems. Before founding Cyware, Akshat served as the director of programs at Oracle and was key to facilitating cloud ventures for Oracle Enterprise Manager. His earlier role at Adobe Systems also shaped the company's core products to grow to a substantial scale and help secure several patents in the core technology domains. Avkash Kathiriya currently is VP Security Research and Innovations at Cyware Labs. He has 10 years plus of rich experience in the defensive side of the information security domain. He is currently working on security research in the domain of automated incident response using orchestration and threat intelligence framework for practical implementation. He is also associated with the Mumbai chapter of the Null community. Thank you so much for joining us, Avkash and Akshat. For the audience, if you have any questions for the speakers, kindly drop them in the question box in the webinar control panel. The speakers will address them from time to time or at the end of the session. Thank you so much. Over to you, Avkash, and over to you, Akshat.
Yeah, thanks, Sheetal. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Akshat here. As Sheetal gave the brief introduction about me and Avkash, I'm co-founder and CTO for Cyware. So today's topic is collaborated cyber defense in pandemic times, where we just try to set up a brief analogy between physical world, real world pandemics versus the kind of impact it is having, may have on the cyber world for all of us. And then we will try to walk you through how there are some measures which we can take, using which we can improve our overall cyber posture and can do a collaborated cyber defense in these times, and even can continue forever, because that's something which is useful for our overall cyber security posture. Avkash, can you start moving to the slides? Perfect. So what's a pandemic? Because I was talking to my team and some other guys, like and here we are giving the physical word definitions, and in next slides we will try to start mapping it with the cyber word. Let's see what's epidemic versus pandemic. Very, very basic generic stuff, but and then we will try to give analogy for everything in cyber world. We know epidemic is something in which a disease is just spreading. It's like it's a local problem in local country like China. Initially it started, it was an epidemic, it was not a pandemic. And the moment it's pandemic, it's more like where it is spreading geographically, multiple countries. It's a disease that affects probably the entire world, and like it's spreading very fast, and it's kind of going out of control, and something which makes the entire world worried about. If we see in the cyber world, so cyber world also has many of these similar scenarios. We have kind of WannaCry kind of ransomware, which was kind of at its own time, it was kind of a pandemic. It was spreading across the world, so many companies. And then we have so many local infections. We have so many sectorial specific targeted attacks, which we have, like, we can say in form of epidemic. Okay, so pandemic versus cyber crisis. In a typical word, we just try to map or use the same lingo or same techniques which we use in both physical world and cyber world. So let's first take the physical word, the pandemic word. It's prevent, detect, respond, and predict. Prevent. We can prevent a pandemic by having right vaccines. Hope I pray that we get a good vaccine for COVID-19 soon. By hygiene practices, we can prevent it by following right social distancing, mask, and so many other things. Let's not go there. Detect, testing. We have to detect, because that's the key for finding any pandemic or detecting it. Respond, then you respond by proper treatment. You trace the chain, you quarantine the people, and do the proper treatment. And predict, it's like you have various research. Countries are sharing information with WHO, where you start finding, connecting the dots, and then it's a pandemic. Now let's take all four of these for cyber world in a cyber crisis, when a cyber crisis comes. And many of these will get equally applicable to our cyber world. Prevent, detect, respond, predict. Same, prevent. Even in cyber world, we have vaccines, which are like various of preventive controls I have, whether it's firewall, IPS, antivirus, EDR, many other things. And hygiene practice, where me as each and every individual, each and every stakeholder in any company, starting from a employee or everyone to the senior management who's having a digital touch point, digital interface, they have to follow tons of hygiene practices. We are not going to talk about those a lot, because topic is not to touch about like how to prevent yourself or how to protect yourself from phishing and other things. But yes, just giving an analogy here. And Was there any question? Someone was saying. Okay. Then you have detect, where you have various other security controls. We have SIM, data lake, UBA, NBAD, many more. Respond, where you have incident response mechanism, SOAR platform, various playbooks, which has workflows for various use cases, various flows to respond if that happens, what to respond. And then comes the predict part, where like the word is moving towards, because after everything like settles down, after something has come, you respond, you are out of that, your containment is done, then you start investing towards predicting. You start predicting that how do I predict, or how do I prevent via prediction, because predict and prevent goes hand in hand. So in cyber world, that comes where like intel, information sharing, where we were saying in the physical world, country sharing info with WHO, where information sharing starts happening. I start sharing the threat intel with each other. My incident becomes intel for you. And then it's kind of a follow of prediction and prevention when we jointly follow that model. Next slide, Avkash. Okay, so let me start moving towards from the physical world analogies, which we were taking on the first two slides, to the more cyber world and cyber security transition altogether. So now we all are in pandemic. We are working from home. This is a new norm where in the digital world, where we had a lot of touch point, and those touch points are now like earlier they were in a parameter. For many of the companies, like most of those touch points were within the office premises, or you had a limited capabilities VPNs. But now all those digital touch points are spread across various cities, across various countries, and those limited capabilities or capacities VPNs are over exhausted. And there are many things we need as a improvement in our overall posture to continue protecting or continue safeguarding my organizations. For sure, workforce plays a very, very, very important role. So I'll talk about that briefly, whether it's security awareness, will not go into the detail in that. Security framework was not designed for working from home, because most of the regulated industries like banks and all, it was mandated for so many functions to be present in office to even use the systems, all the critical systems. Potential delays in recognizing malicious attacks, that's what the result will be, and higher rate of vulnerability exploitation. I'll just start connecting the dots, like in next slide, whatever we are talking about. Increased COVID-19 themed malicious activity. So if you see a survey which is done by Zscaler, and it's a report only from the one vendor, the percentage hike in phishing website and malware which are targeting remote user is 30,000% up vis-a-vis January and February. So that's where like all these threat actors and bad actors or hackers are using this as an opportunity to target those remote workforce, which may or may not be very well aware on those digital touch points. List of like the themed malicious activity, whether it's spear phishing attacks, that's the most prominent one. Ransomware attacks we have seen, though it has not related to COVID, but Maze ransomware attack, which has impacted large organizations, BEC attacks, malspam attacks, ransomware, and smishing. All of these attacks have increased during COVID-19 and during this new norm where all of us are working digitally from home. Go ahead, Avkash. So I think here I'll just take a pause. I'll hand over to Avkash, and I'll come back at the later part of the presentation, where I'll request Avkash to walk us through into the core actions. What's the information? What we are talking about? What do we mean by defense? What do we mean by collaboration? What to defend? What to share? What not to share? What is information? What is intel? So Avkash, I'll let you take over from here, and I'll come back in the later part of the discussion again.
Sure, Akshat, I think thanks. And I still remember one or two things which you highlighted from the previous slide. I still remember my SOC days where what we were talking about in physical world and cyber world. So we may say that it's a pandemic, or we may relate it to the cyber crisis, but in real situation also we generally have the analogy of security incident or security alert. When it is reported, then post triaging we escalate it to the incident, or maybe one incident becomes very larger into the scale and the infection becomes widespread across the organization, across the geography, and we declare this as a cyber crisis. And obviously, the way how we handle our security alerts, incidents, and the crisis change, because in the time of crisis, you may need to be more open-minded and more collaborative across the stakeholder, across the board, within the organization. Even we have seen, let's say, one organization just simply hit by one ransomware infection in one of the machines. It's still fine. I can go start isolate that machine and try recovering the information. But we have already witnessed the scenarios like WannaCry, where it's not just one machine within one organization getting impacted, but the kind of chaos, those kind of malware which can create and which can self-replicate or move laterally from one machine to another machine, that was something really scary. And if you see the physical world malware example, like what we are seeing right now, COVID-19, is very similar if we take that example of WannaCry. And that's why if you see now your one machine is infected and then suddenly you see, okay, the 5,000 assets or 1,000 assets are getting encrypted, you need to pull up your sleeves and get to the board and start discussing at organization level strategy in terms of how you can isolate those machines proactively, how you can detect those machines proactively, or how you can start asking for more information from different part of the organization. And if you see any of those situations, I still remember those days when suddenly that WannaCry broke out, happened in the night, and we all were sitting on the SOC desk, and it was other part of the world where the attack was started, and to receive that information beforehand, where I was managing, it was so much helpful to prepare my SOC, for that situation beforehand. We started collecting information like, what kind of malware sample it is, okay, what are the capabilities for this malware sample, what are the things which I can proactively put in my infrastructure to make sure that that first of all I do not get the first infection, but even if I get the first infection, I'm able to contain or isolate those infection in real time. And those way I literally realized the value of information sharing across the board. Happening that time, people were real time doing the malware reverse engineering and sharing the indicator of compromise, indicator of actions, what needs to be done. And then that's where the concept of whole information sharing or the knowledge sharing or threat intel information sharing came into a more powerful way for any SOC organization. And that's why I see that information sharing is going to be the key, not just today, but going forward in any day-to-day operations, which we will be doing in our cyber defense operation. And there are multiple benefits of sharing the information, because collaboration is the key in everywhere. I remember being a red teamer also, many attackers leverages many tools which have been developed by the red teamers or being shared by the offensive guys, or somebody creates one malware, it's being used, or somebody has set up some botnet networks which is being used by other attackers to leverage, deploy their malwares. So on the other side of the table, already bad actors or the threat actors are collaborating. So it is equally important on this side of the table to make sure that we are also collaborating and creating the ecosystem to make sure that we are creating that beforehand defense for each and every participants available within our ecosystem. So let me move towards the more concept of threat intel versus threat information, because that's always blurred line which I have seen when people talk about the threat data. So if you see, look at the pyramid here. So as an organization, when I receive any data from outside the organization, that's the threat data, and that's maybe coming it from multiple sources, be it my trusted sources or be it my open source intel sources which are subscribed to, or I may be subscribed to some paid sources or information coming from my security partners. So that's still a data for me. The main important aspect is you may be receiving thousands of data on a daily basis, and there are multiple types of information. We will go into the next slide about of what are those types of information which we receive and what to be done and how should we handle it. But if you see mainly from a pipeline perspective, the triangle here drives you that how you convert your data into information and information into the knowledge. So once you start extracting the information or from this data, you start putting a context saying that, okay, what information is relevant from this data. Let's give an example. Let's say I may receive a 5,000 or 10,000 or 500 or 50 hash malware hash on a daily basis, which somebody is sharing, being malicious somewhere in the world. But let's say I'm a bank. I'm part of the one of the banking organization, and I'm taking care of the security operations for the bank. And the very first thing that I should be doing is if somebody shares that, okay, this 50 malware hash has been reported by XYZ source, but then I should start adding the context. Okay, what are this hash related to? Any malware families? What are these malware families targeting? They are targeting any specific geography? Are they targeting any specific sector? And then based on those answers, I will start extracting the information. Because if somebody is sharing a malware hash which is targeting any nuclear power plant, I may not be direct party to that information, and I should start acting on that information because in my infrastructure, I'm nowhere using any technology which is like a nuclear power plant. I'm running more of a banking operations. So while consuming any threat data, it's most important to have a context around that information. And once you have the context, you have the threat information with you. The next step comes is how you start converting that into knowledge. And that comes when you apply this information. And once you apply the information, you will have a learning from your SOC team, from your incident response team, threat hunting team, and you start documenting that knowledge because applied information is the gold mine, I would say, for any organization. And this knowledge, which is applied information, can be used multifold between security risk management team or threat hunting team or SOC team, which is managing your content, or incident response team who is responding to those threats. So that's why typically important to understand this pyramid of data versus information versus knowledge, and to know your boundaries, that where threat intel lies and what you should do beforehand and afterhand. So now jumping back to the types which I was speaking previously, that there are many types of information which you receive on a day-to-day basis, and I just put high-level intelligence type, which we divide into two parts: the macro and the micro. And we have four types of threat information, threat intelligence: strategic, operational, tactical, and technical. And we all are aware of this type, and we keep receiving this information. For example, technical is the most common example we receive. The indicators of compromise, malicious IP, domain, URL hash. Similarly, we have seen now many organizations are maturing and migrating towards tactical information harnessing, where they have started creating their risk database for the TTPs, for attacker tactics, tools, or techniques and procedures. So MITRE ATT&CK framework is one such example. If you have seen the current adoption, most of organizations have started using those framework for managing and reviewing the heat map of the risk which they are facing, the type of technology which they have in place to either prevent those TTPs or detect those TTPs, or the kind of use case they are writing, or the hunt hypothesis they are building. They are moving towards more tactical information or tactical way to handle those threats. And we always been using a lot of strategic and operational intel and information. Strategic we all receive on day-to-day basis in our emails. We keep reading news articles, or many organizations keep publishing this quarterly threat reports, yearly threat reports, and we consume those information to see how the threat landscape is moving from one direction to another direction, one geography, specific sector, and then we try to incorporate those strategic reports into our own business strategies, which can facilitate any strategic business decisions, any risk which is arising into the new business strategies which we are planning. And obviously operational intel we keep on gathering about any vulnerabilities, any exploitation being discussed about any of your customer facing website, or somebody is talking about any exploitation of any vulnerability, or any data being stored into the dark web. So many aspects about operational information which we discuss or which we act upon. If you see high level, the left side is more for human, where human gets this information, act on, and then maybe with the help of machine it takes specific action. While we have seen the right side is still more focused on the machines, where machine can consume this information and act on this information by deciphering or by automatically enriching and acting upon those information. So again, people ask that, okay, I have this different type of information as an organization. What should be my strategy? That what should and how I should be handling this information? So if you see here, you have this information coming from multiple places. There are multiple sources which can share this information. So I have divided. So let's say this is within your organization. Once you receive this information, you have kind of we have created two pipelines that how we use this information. So the above part is more for human and the below part is more for machine. So this covers the strategic operational aspect, and the below covers the tactical and technical. Obviously, they both have to go hand in hand. And whenever a human is reading or any strategic information, and if any tactical or the technical aspect can be extracted, it should be collaborated or shared here immediately, or vice versa. When we are receiving or processing any technical information and it requires any strategic input or strategic extraction of information, we should be sharing this information on the other side of the table as well. We need to make sure that we are processing this information both way, while we are not keeping it in silos, and collaboration is equally happening within organization. And if you see on the right side, after you process or act on those information within the organization, we need to make sure that we are also collaborating outside with other entities. We'll go into this collaboration concept in detail, but this is like a high level workflow for any types of information which you consume today, and how you will put that 60,000 view of those data processing. If you go into the depth of the Intel life cycle, which I keep receiving this question many times, specifically from threat intel managers, says that there is a standard set of life cycle which says I will consume the intel from multiple places, and I will obviously try to build the context. I will enrich those information. I will do some decision making. I will then act on that information, and then I may start collaborating that information. So there's always a balance between the human and machine. We try to find out that what are the things which I can do with the help of machine automatically, and what are the things I should still need a human to help me on those aspects. So if you see here, maybe your intel ingestion can be fully automated. You can use the REST APIs, or you can use the unstructured data processing using any of the options available today in terms of technology. We have seen many advancements has happened in terms of technologies to handle structured data as well as unstructured data and automatically create technical or the tactical information from those sources. While enrichment still remains semi-automated, you can do complete automation, but when it comes to a human brain, human might want to enrich their information at more strategic and operational aspect, because tactical and technical, obviously those kind of information can be auto enriched using machine, but when it comes to more strategic and operational information, we might still need human to decipher those information and enrich as per the human knowledge. And same goes to the other phases like collaboration, where we need first of all human intent. That's the most important aspect in collaboration. And then obviously, what information you are sharing, is it consumable by other party or not? And similarly, decision making and the response, where it's still semi-automated, where the human and machine combination work on those life cycle phases. So now again, let's go to the 35,000 view about this information which you are processing. So this has to be a continuous process of information which you harness, process, or act upon. Has to be done all the stages. Like even if you are not getting attacked or not under any attack, you should be day-to-day basis proactively collecting, enriching, and contextualizing, and acting upon the information which you are receiving proactively from any other attacks which are being observed globally, or which your peer organization are observing, or which your security partners are observing with their other clients. So you should be proactively keep on processing those information and acting on those information beforehand. And during an attack also, this information comes very handy. The first is you should keep reusing the information which you have to build more context. Let's say I see any attack from specific URL originating or specific malware hash originating. But if I can start leveraging the information which I have to move this information from more technical in nature. Let's say, can I get that this URL is generally associated with this malware payload delivery. This malware, where I put this sandbox result, I found that is capable of executing this 5 or 10 TTPs. And I start mapping this complete, the tactical IOCs to more tactical TTPs, so that when you are under attack, you can go and put those counter defense in place, which will give you more breathing period. Let's say an example. When you receive any malware hash, or any malware which you observe, which was performing, let's say, credential dumping from memory. So if you just block that hash, it's high chance that attacker will reuse the same code and do a minor tweak into the code and again send you the malware for delivery for another channel. But what if you are able to map this information back to the tactic, saying that okay, this malware is capable to do the credential dumping from the memory? Can I protect such kind of technique using my antivirus solution? If answer is yes, let me go and put that signature. If answer is no, can I put a detection signature in my EDR so that any attempt in the memory to dump the credential should be noted and should be alerted to my SOC so they can go and start investigation? So this kind of tactical countermeasures of the defense which we will put into place will buy us more time when you are responding to any threat or any threat. And obviously after an attack, it's important that nothing over. It doesn't mean that you were attacked once and you can never be attacked in future. So you need to make sure that after the attack also you are continuously documenting all your learnings from all the aspects, and you are equally collaborating the information which is generated during the attack within the organization and collaborating internally as well as collaborating externally, so that everybody can benefit of those learning. Collaboration. So I was keep talking since start that collaboration is key, and there are multiple types of collaboration. We talked about internal collaboration. We talked about external collaboration. Let's go in depth about this specific collaboration. That why and how part of this collaboration. What you should be doing and specific use cases. So let's see the concept of fusion center, which we have seen getting more popular now amongst the lot of information security functions or the cyber functions, where information sharing is becoming critical within one organization or within the operations of the cybers which we are running. So threat intel or any information about any threat which we are observing or which we observe needs to be collaborated. And one thing I need to draw attention, that when we talk about threat intel, as I said, let's not put in our mind that threat intel is just IOC or malicious IP domain URL hash. Let's go beyond and see the information to the level that not just IOC but the TTP, strategic information, operational information, and also the countermeasures for those threats. So when we talk about threat intel, it's not just about the intelligence about the threats, but how you will counter those threats. What are the course of action you have deployed or you will deploy or you can deploy against those threats. So having the discussions around the threats and the countermeasures against the threat is equally important when we talk about threat intel or threat knowledge. So if you see here within organization, I have put some high level collaboration, let's say SOC, which is a standard use case where while building a SOC use case, threat intel information can be leveraged, or while incident responders are responding to any specific attack or specific incident, they can come back and get the specific contextual information about the threats, or let's say when a threat hunter are building their hunt hypothesis, they can leverage the threat intel information, because we know hunting can be start multiple ways, and one of the type of threat hunting is intel driven hunting, and that's where they can come and maybe do the IOC driven hunting, or maybe even do TTP driven hunting. So you go and build your hypothesis and start hunt those scenarios on different technologies. Similarly, vulnerability management team can also use the threat information for triaging that vulnerabilities, for prioritizing the patching. Let's say when I receive any CVID, I can look up to the threat intel. Hey, is this vulnerability being exploited by any of the known threat actor, or is it associated with any of the popular malware or the malware families? So many relations can be built around those sticks objects which we have, like threat actor, intrusion set, PTPs, or indicators. Similarly, security architects. So this is also, we have seen many organizations have started mapping their security architecture back to the risk posture. About in my current architecture can defend or can detect what kind of TDPs. So if you have heard about there's a MITRE project called TAC Eval, where they have started mapping the capabilities of each tools or each technologies from a coverage perspective. That okay, this technologies can have big coverage of the 100 TDPs or 200 TDPs. So you can leverage those information. Also, you have your own architecture, so you can start preparing your own control heat map, saying that okay, I have the current risk of this 5 or 50 TTPs for my organization, and I already have preventive control or detective control for this 20 control. So any next security tool which I will be purchasing, or from architecture review perspective, I should be focusing on those red TTPs which I'm currently missing and are also currently high risk for my organization. Similarly, we have seen collaboration with fraud management team, like typically financial sector. where they have a lot of frauds around car data, or in telco sector we have seen frauds around IMEI number or the mobile numbers. So any types of fraud which is more of a cyber in nature, we can leverage to enrich more information to do effective fraud management. And obviously the risk management team to give visibility and the input specifically for the current risks which we are facing from a cyber threat perspective, or more of a predictive cyber risk which we may face by looking at the threat intel information which we are observing in similar geography or similar sectors. So this may be very high level view about the collaboration, but if you go in detail about the technical aspects of the collaboration, so I just put high level example here, saying that how technical integration may exist in one organization when you talk about this collaboration. So if you see here, you have threat intel coming from various sources, and you have central location where you are storing all the information. The same time we are contextualizing or enriching the information from external sources or internal sources. You also have your human who can continuously review this information or put an enrichment into this information. And different technologies or different function can come and have the use case. Let's say I have my incident response team. They are using their own incident response platform. So during incident investigation, they may send any IOC for enrichment or for investigation. And once we have more context around those threats, that what and how part of this threat, I as an incident responder, I may get start performing the action. Here I just put one example of a technology like ITSM, but this can go to any security technology where I want to do more preventive action, or I want to have some detection based action on respective technology. Similarly, for threat hunting, as I said, when as a threat hunter, when I start, the two questions which comes into the mind, that what to hunt and where to hunt. So the first question, what to hunt, absolutely I can ask, to the threat intel, saying that tell me the most popular TTP or the most popular technique which is being used by all the APT groups in Asia Pacific as a geography, or tell me the most popular TTP from all threat actors which are targeting finance as a sector, so that I can analyze those TTP. I can make my hunt hypothesis around that TTP, and then the second part comes that okay, where do I hunt? And that's where I start looking out for the log sources. Okay, for this hunt hypothesis, what are the log sources I need to have in terms of visibility, where I can go and run my hunt hypothesis, and then that's where I can start identifying if those threats are available more proactively by going through the log sources which I have. So vulnerability management team, as I've already said, more from a triaging perspective. So you may query those CVIDs for threat intel team, and you can get context like probable threat actors exploiting this kind of vulnerability currently, any exploit available for that vulnerability, or any malware currently exploiting those vulnerabilities. So all those kind of context can be added for threat intel and for vulnerability, and you can try it, and you can prioritize the patching of those vulnerabilities. Similarly, obviously, for SOC, now we have seen the most popular use of the threat intel, not just the updating your watch list in your SIM. That's obviously from day one of threat intel. We are doing that, and still we are keep updating our SIM watch list for any correlation with the firewall data or a proxy data or antivirus data, so that we can prioritize any event based on the threat intel. But now we have seen that SOC teams have also started leveraging the threat intel information for creating and prioritizing the SOC use cases as well. So similar to the hunt hypothesis, as a SOC manager or a content developer, I can go and leverage those information in that, okay, what use case I need to go and prioritize, what kind of threats are on the rise for our organization specifically from threat intel perspective or landscape perspective, and I can start learning those TDPs or tactics or more operational or strategic information, and I can start creating a use case specifically for those threats in my detection center. And obviously, once those alerts are detected, we'll again have a circle back to the incident response team, and they will start acting on those incidents. Uh, Akshat, you want to add anything on the external collaboration perspective, like we are doing more on the internal collaboration? Why it is important to collaborate externally? What are the benefits, and what are the different methods today exist where people are collaborating, or where machine can help collaborate?
Sure, thanks Avkash for covering everything, and I think I'll quickly wind it up in next 5 to 6 minutes so we can open up for questions and answers for last 10 minutes for the session. So guys, like as Avkash was covering about what defense is and what collaboration is, and he touched based on various internal collaboration practices. One of the integral and important part of the collaboration, which was saying collaborative defense, is also primarily with the external parties, where there are multiple things, and let's quickly go through all of those. One is like between leaders, where we are saying all the CISOs from the same sector or different sectors countrywide in various CISO forums. The CISOs have to start sharing, or the leaders, or the CISOs down, or leaders, let's say all cybersecurity leaders, they have to start sharing this intel information, strategic intel, risk information, which could be in various formats, which could be human specific format, where Avkash was touching upon human versus machine, where strategic intel is what, like where a lot of context around strategic threat intel. Then intel sharing part, the machine level intel which needs to be shared between leaders, and a lot of risk information, which is in many times unstructured information, but plays a very important role when it is collaborated. And it's more of a like community help. It's more like a give and take, like you collaborate, you share with your other leaders, and they share back with you a lot of information. And we are not discussing about like how do you share, where do you share. Yes, there are many ways. It could be as simple from forwarding mails or WhatsApp to real community based platforms where they can share, but sharing is important. Go ahead, Kash, next slide please. Okay, so then we say external collaboration between organizations, which is again important part of the prediction / prevention buckets which we were talking about in the beginning. So it is like I have a malicious IP reported by my SIM. I have a, let's say, that intel platform or some sort of that stuff, where me as a company may be part of various communities, or like let's say CERT or ISEX or peer org tip. So in my organization, that malicious IP comes to my own platform, where I am kind of massaging it, I'm enriching it using my intel sources, internal sources, the sandbox, the VT, the TI providers, and it is found out that this is an information, this is an intel which is certainly malicious, confirmed, and it should be shared with others in the community. So I can share it with my ISEC, I can share it with my CERT or sectorial ISEC, or if I'm part of a community of my peer organizations or peer groups or my parent or my subsidiaries, what is important is sharing. It could be complete anonymous, because what matters to the other party, what matters to all of us is getting information about those malicious indicators, getting those threat intel. Doesn't matter from where it is coming. So for example, in case of my CERT or my ISEC, Bank A shared it with ISEC, and now further ISEC shared it with all other 100 banks in India or other countries. What mattered to all other banks, that intel, not it was shared by Bank A. That attribution itself may or may not be there, which is not important. And then from there, it can further downstream to various security controls once it reaches to other organizations and get benefited for all of us. Next slide, please, Avkash. Okay. So guys, let's quickly move on to takeaways, because we just want to leave last 10 minutes for question answers, where all of us can brainstorm, or we can help in explaining any doubts any one of us may have. Okay, so one is identify bottlenecks and where manual processes are slowing you down, and apply automation wherever possible. So first we need to find bottlenecks. We have to find the repetitive task, and we need to automate whichever manual task or repetitive task or mundane task can be automated, because that will increase the overall speed and workflow in the entire ecosystem. We need to start contextualizing the intelligence with various either vulnerabilities or actors or malware or assets and incidents. The fusion concept, the fusion part, which Avkash was talking about in one of the slides, where I start contextualizing, because I may be receiving tons of intel, I may be receiving a lot of intel, but what's relevant for me? Where I start contextualizing, because that's what is important. Because out of the entire ocean of the information I'm receiving, even for Corona, what's relevant for me? What's relevant for my city, my colony, my containment zone? So you start contextualizing everything for yourself. And then third is we have to keep on engaged. We have to start, if we are not doing, we have to participate. We have to receive as well as share. Both are important. But at this step one, we have to start receiving and start ingesting, start digesting, starts contextualizing, starts analyzing, and start taking action on the intel which I'm getting from my ISEX, from my CERT, from my vendors, from my partners. So that is where the collaborative defense starts. And in pandemic times, needed more. Even in non-pandemic times, continuous, because it's a continuous effort. It's a continuous engagement to, like, where all good people are working together to protect all of us from the bad people, because we need to prove and show that we are a better team together compared to the other party. So I think these are few of the takeaways which we can have from the session, where we start identifying from things to contextualizing it for us, and starts ingesting, digesting, analyzing, and engaging in the information and intel sharing. That's where I'll stop. And I think both me and Avkash are more than happy to take any questions we may have. Sheetal, if you can help with the questions.
Thank you, Avkash. Thank you, Akshat. So we have, thank you so much for this amazing session. We have received few questions. I'll start the question. The first question is, while collaboration sounds very interesting and relevant, is there a way to measure benefits of collaboration?
Go ahead, Avkash.
So, interesting question. Obviously, there are many ways to, you can quantify the value of the collaboration, but we need to see that. So first of all, we keep on receiving so many information on day-to-day basis. So when you are storing this information, first of all, you need to start making sure that which information has come via collaboration, and which information has come via just any subscription. And then once you receive, you tag this information in respective buckets. So, and then you will obviously apply this information within your infrastructure. Let's say, I receive this information and I put it into my SIEM or any other places. And then the outcome will be knowledge, which I was showing previously, that what is the outcome of the information which I applied. And then it comes, that this many false positive, or no, this information is not correct, this information is accurate for me. So that knowledge or the outcome of your applied information, it's where you need to again tag back to those tags which we previously said, okay, how many through collaboration I have received and how many through other sources I have received. And then you start creating the metrics about, the information which you are receiving through collaboration, whether it, how much time you are receiving, which information came first, and also how was the effectiveness or the efficacy of the information based on the outcome or the applied knowledge which I have personally observed within my organization.
And I'll just add a few things here. So feel free to reach us, guys, like whosoever has asked that question. We can't see the name. like when you are sharing in sticks format, there are ways like where when we are doing effective two-way sharing, then we have something called sightings. So I share with 100 people, and 100 people out of 150 people comes back and confirm, yes, we have seen this malicious indicator in our own environment, right? So this starts increasing the overall score of the intel, because number of sightings are increasing, and which starts giving me confidence. We know that intel is classified as TLP, red, amber, green, and white. So the confidence score as well as classification of intel keeps on increasing. And then we can, as Avkash was saying, we can make various metrics around it to measure the effectiveness of the intel which I'm receiving via collaboration sources.
Okay. Thank you so much, Akshat and Avkash. We have another question from Deeman. The question starts, thanks for the insightful presentation. As a small startup handling highly confidential data from clients, what are the controls we need to start looking into on a higher level to protect the data? When do we really need to hire a CISO or a SOC
Okay, so let me take the question.
Go ahead, Avkash. Not related to topic, but it's more a generic question.
Yeah, it's more of a generic question. I can 100% relate to this question because I've been, in my previous experience, I've been working on the other side of the table for larger banks, as well as I've worked since last 2 years. I've been working for the startups as well for product side, and this I would say this will be always contextual about one particular organization, that how critical and what is the critical information for you. But I think if you look at the kind of frameworks that we have today, whether you take NIST or SANS or any other, it will tell you the high level 6,000 view of the strategy, that how and where you start. So and that goes back to the typical days, that how we used to protect. So the strategy says, first of all, you try to protect the any threat, or try to prevent the threat if possible. If not, try putting a detective control around those security technology, or any technology, or the infrastructure is critical for you, or crown jewel for you, and have some detection method in place. And then once you detect, try to respond to those, and have a mechanism place to respond. And then obviously the predict domain, which is now everybody's applying, said beforehand, if any attack will happen or any data loss will happen, a vulnerability exploitation will happen, can you have some mechanism in place to predict those things? So you can go back to those standard framework, and start identifying your crown jewels, and start putting the preventive detective controls, or the response control, or predictive control around those crown jewels.
Thank you, Avkash. Thank you, Akshat. So the next question is from Anton. The question is, during these pandemic times, how should we identify the shadow ITs which are occurring in our organizations, as well as how should we improve the awareness among employees regarding the social engineering and the phishing attacks which might happen, considering the amount of phishing websites are increasing daily?
Akshat, you want to take the awareness part?
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. So a couple of things. I think a couple of interesting things which are pointed in the question. One is the shadow IT part and the overall awareness part. Shadow IT is a like I can associate myself being in IT industry. It's a big problem, major problem, and I think the previous question where we were like someone asked like where do we need to hire the CISO, and I think you start getting symptoms in your company, in your organization, where things starts going out of control, because CISO job is not only about security but around security processes and controls as well. So all those shadow IT related problems, you have to have strong processes, controls. So you start not having those shadow IT exposing like external risk. Means sometimes shadow IT's systems or applications are not avoidable, but the strong processes can control not having kind of birth of those shadow IT applications and kind of small teams and centers. On awareness part, so it's a tricky piece. Like generally we see awareness is like something which is a continuous effort, and it's something which many people really not 100% kind of really focus about, because what many people do on name of awareness is something like having those banners, sending some updates mails once in a month or something. Is it important? Yes. Is it good enough? No. Because what we see awareness is a continuous process. It's not something I aware you only once in a month. And awareness I generally see is divided into kind of two parts. One is like more static awareness and one is more dynamic awareness or situational awareness. Static is more like do's and don'ts and definitions, right? Static is more like in Mumbai that this place is always having traffic jam. That's the static information. Dynamic is what's happening right now. What's the situational awareness? What's the status right now? How many cases I have right now in Mumbai, or how many which are the red zones right now? So which is a continuous information I have to share with my employees, with my stakeholders, with my third-party vendors, with everyone who's having access to my application. So I think awareness itself is a very big piece where I can personally keep on going and speaking for an hour or so. But all of us have to just make sure that identify that what's the right content for you for awareness part, what are the right tools and mechanism, and just third is make sure that it's a continuous engagement, it's a continuous effort. Because let's say I'm a developer, I'm a developer in my company, in my bank, and I'm using Java applications, right? I'm doing coding on Java. There's a Java vulnerability which came today, so it's relevant for me. It's something which I have to be shared with that employee today, but it might not be applicable to the sales guys. But what I do currently is I just make one newsletter, one banner, and I share on 1st of the month or 15th of the month. Good enough, important, but certainly much more to be needed. I'm not sure all of you guys are in the development world, but there's a big major GitLab vulnerability which was disclosed today on HackerOne, and this is something like the IT teams and those teams which are managing source code repositories on GitLab in various organizations. They need to know immediately. That's awareness. That's the sharing of information leads to the awareness. So I think good question. Sorry, long answer, but there can be a longer answer. Very important topic, has to do continuously.
So
Sorry,
just say summarize,
right
information to the right people in right time, right format.
Correct. Okay, good, Sheetal. I'm not sure if we have time for more questions, or please take your own call.
We have just overshooted the time, but still we'll take one question. This is in the continuation of the questions. So David has asked, you talked about, so the question starts, you talked about the awareness regarding the security among the employees right now, but these days people continue to use vulnerable softwares like Zoom, Flash, etc., even though it's coming in all over the media that it is unsafe to use. What are your thoughts about it?
Subjective and tricky question. So I think my take is here, David, thanks for asking this. And yes, like everyone is talking about, media is talking about Zoom. I think we should see that, and I have no personal bias in favor of Zoom or against Zoom, but generic, we see Windows has so many vulnerabilities, right? And all of us use Windows, right? Because there are less choices. Because if I go to Linux or Safari, Mac, those OS may not be either commercially viable for me, or may not be ease of use or richness or what purpose I need to use a computer for, right? So many times there are many things which are because of the choice as well. But as far as any like generic, if we don't take it beyond the Zoom context, like we and that vulnerability which is there in Zoom may not be applicable to all of us, because if you're using passwords, if you're locking your meeting after all participants are joined, you don't enable let others join before host joins. So many of those precautions are there, which can still allow you to use a vulnerable software in a fully safe fashion, because that vulnerability might be in a particular use case or in a particular corner case. That does not mean that 80% of the users who are using 80% of the use cases of that software, whether it's Zoom or Windows, it is impacting their uses of the software, because bugs are inevitable. They have to be, they are there, they will stay. And I think it's all about security controls, those precautions, having right awareness about those vulnerabilities and precautions and actions which I can take to safeguard myself from those vulnerabilities if I don't have a choice of not using that vulnerable software which I know about.
Okay. Akshat, so I'll just take this one last question.
Sure, please go ahead.
It's quite long question. So I'll just go ahead. The question starts, what should be taken care of when ransomware attack happens, considering it's only trust that hacker might reveal some vulnerabilities? Many don't have SOC in place and might take a lot of time to implement. What is the immediate action or solution to monitor suspicious events incidents that happen like this? Considering no SOC as of now and takes time to implement.
Avkash, you want to take it? Malware, ransomware.
If I understood the question correctly, let me try to answer. So as I was keep saying that, so even ransomwares are also smart. It's not about just encrypting the data, as I said, WannaCry, where it was the very simple thing that attacker did, just combine the ransomware capability with one of the vulnerability exploitation, and it was the jackpot for him because that malware was now self-propagating and going through the networks to the other networks and keep encrypting and keep asking for the money. But if you see, still there also a lot of learnings were there for the SOC team, for the defenders. There was fundamental called kill switch, which many organizations proactively identified. They put it into their local DNS and they were able to bypass any impact that that particular ransomware would have done. So again, I would more emphasize in this situation of information sharing that if we keep a tab on the cyber situations which are happening globally, and there are multiple ways, from using which you can keep a tab to proactively make sure your SOC is up to date about all the attacks which are happening globally in different geography, different sectors, and you are reusing that information, reapplying that information within your SOC first of all to make sure that you do not end up, compromising, or you do not end up having the same attack within your infrastructure. That's the first part. Second, even if you have applied information, applied knowledge, or already implemented, saying that even if the same malware comes, I know the kill switch, or I know the way to detect or prevent that particular ransomware being encrypting my data or being infecting my other machines in my network. So as I said, we can use the information sharing to proactively work on the security controls, and also not just stay till technical aspect, but more go tactical aspect, and also apply that information for your SOC team beforehand and also during the.
Hello.
I can't hear Avkash. Sheetal, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, might be
I can
Avkash
hear
connection
you.
got dropped. Yeah, I think his connection got dropped. No worries. Any other question which you want me to take?
Okay. No, actually, for other questions, we will. So we are having so many questions right now. We'll let you know about the questions after this is over because we have overshooted our time quite a lot.
No worries.
As for the audience, if you have any more questions, you can email it to us or post it us on our social media. Thank you, Akshat, so much. Thank you, Avkash. We hope this was a very helpful session for all those who have joined us here. And as for the audience, when you are closing the webinar browser window, few questions will pop up. Kindly reply them. That will be very helpful for us. Thank you for joining us. This session is over. We look forward to meeting you in many more future sessions.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.